Good evening, everyone. I want to talk about something a little bit different today. This is a little different video than what I typically do because it was brought on by buying a piece of technology, actually this Wacom tablet right here, and that sent me down a little bit of a rabbit hunt, if you want, to try to figure out why something wasn't possible. And then I figured out why it wasn't possible, and then I got a hint that it is possible, if that makes any sense. And what I was thinking of is, I got this Wacom tablet because I wanted to be able to use my laptop here with a pen input, because I use that for a lot of day-to-day stuff. I like to write on documents and things like that, as opposed to typing on them. And I've been carrying the iPad and the pencil, the Apple Pencil, along for that purpose. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if the pencil worked on the tablet, on the trackpad, as though it were a tablet? And as I said, that led me down this rabbit hole of the technologies involved in making pen input tablets, like touchscreens in general, but I'm focused on the pen input. There are three general technologies which I'd like to talk about. Not really in any order. I don't know which was developed first. I think the capacitive touchscreens are later, but that's not actually clear to me. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then I will talk about why Apple doesn't have this work on here, but then maybe about how they can and why we have a hint of that, if that makes any sense. I'm going to try to do this all in a single take. I don't know if that's possible, but that's kind of my game. So everything is set up. The lighting is a bit weird because, well, everything's reflective. So I apologize for that. So let's talk first about three types of touchscreen, and this applies to the touchpad on a laptop as well. Three types of technology. This Wacom trackpad is essentially inductive. So there's no battery in the pen, right? And this has been the case of any graphics tablet that anyone's used for decades, right? These go back to the digitizing tablets, which I remember in the 80s, late 80s anyway, where you would have a digitizing tablet, you would have a wired sort of mouse-like thing, which had a coil in it, and it would receive information from the tablet, which presumably has a grid of wires in it, and that would give you a fairly accurate position marker. And we used to use that to do things like, in the biological sciences, digitize paper maps if you needed to get that into the computer somehow. And this is firmly in the 8 and 16-bit days, right? This is, I think the one that I first used was connected to an IBM Portable, right? The competitor of Compaq at that time. Anyway, so what do you do? This works on the same principle. It's got a series of wires. It creates a pulse, which the pen reads, and then the pen reproduces the pulse, which gives it an accurate position sensor. Now, one of the interesting things about that is it works even if you're above the tablet. So let's have a look over here at the laptop, and we can see I'm not touching, if I flip down, I'm not touching the tablet at all. And if I look up here on the computer, once I touch it, right, we have, okay, I'm looking at the phone now, so I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, well, we'll undo that. So what you can see is that this works a lot more like a mouse than you might think. So you could go up to the File menu, click on it, say New, right? And open another, right? So you can have two different things open like that. So fundamental to the technology that's in this tablet here is the ability for it to work. I think this the Wacom's claims it works 7 millimeters above the surface, right? I wrote 7 millimeters, right? So so in other words, this can function as a mouse, and it can function as a tablet, and it's got buttons on it which do different things. One operates as a scroll button, one operates as a left button, right? So in other words, the pen replicates the mouse pretty well. Although set in tablet mode, it's got absolute position, not relative position, but you can change that function in the driver so it will function pretty well exactly like a mouse. So in other words, your mouse interface, which requires the ability to hover for lots of things to work, works fine. I'll just undo that. Works fine with this kind of device. So you can hover over something, right? So I can click that, and you see now I'm hovering. I haven't clicked on anything here, and it's only when I come to the top that I click and close the menu, right? So the ability to hover lets this replicate a mouse. It also lets me use this pen on a screen that's not part of the tablet. It's quite obvious. You're looking at the screen now, the tablet's down here, you're looking at the screen. If I want to know where I'm about to write, I can see that because I can see a little cursor here, right? So that's possible because of this technology, right? Because the kind of technology this works. If you compare that, I'll just push this aside here to the earlier technology, or I don't know if it's actually earlier, that's in a Palm, and I pulled out the Palm and put some batteries in it for that. And the Palm has a stylus. The stylus is just a piece of plastic, right? No active circuitry in here. So this is a resistive touchscreen, right? Yeah. Okay, it's a resistive touchscreen. When you touch it, you cause two layers of plastic to touch together. And if you think about it, it's got essentially functions like a resistor on one axis and a resistor on the other axis. If the processor reads the resistance across those two sides, it gets an XY position. Fine for small screens. It will work with a finger, right? Just fine. If you don't need a very accurate position, you can use it with a stylus when you want more accurate position finding. My thermostat, a relatively inexpensive one, uses a resistive touch screen, and it's absolutely fine for that purpose, right? Very straightforward technology, very simple, very durable until the two layers of plastic wear out and the spacer wears down, but not going to realistically happen in the likely lifespan of something like this. So I can turn the backlight on. This has one of those weird inverse backlights on the Palm 3E. At least it's got one though. So, and this was the technology of this kind of first generation. The Palms all used it, and a lot of this sort of stuff. And this technology was also existing at the same time. Wacom tablets were expensive, and other brands, of course, existed, but Wacom had some of the key patents, and they were expensive, used by graphic artists, engineers, and whatnot. And, you know, mainstream, relatively disposable gadgets like the Palm ended up having ended up having a resistive touchscreen, and frankly, it's completely fine for this purpose. Right? The stylus then becomes very inexpensive, and Palm used to sell those in packages of 2 or 3. Now, along comes laptop computers, and laptop computers had trackballs in them for a long time. But gradually they developed a capacitive system. No, I can't. No, maybe that'll stay. Right? So we get a mouse which works using, I don't think you can see that on the screen, which works using a capacitive sensor. And the first ones only supported single taps, but then they supported double taps and clicks and drags and all sorts of things like that. So you can use this, right? And there's no actual click. This doesn't go down. It senses the touch capacitively. Apple's trackpads are really quite good if you're not used to them and you're used to other ones. Yeah. So we get capacitive, and what this works is this works similarly to the resistive pad, except that it monitors capacitance, and it's getting capacitance between you and your grounded finger, right? So if your fingers grounds this screen, that then is the moment where you have a change in capacitance that can be scanned and recognized by the touchscreen electronics. That's not maybe the best way of saying it, but that's the best I can do for the moment. So, and this technology took over from trackballs, which got dirty, and all the other sorts of things that we had on computers prior to that. But the downside is that although you can obviously get capacitive styluses, which just replace your finger, in other words, as the capacitor, there's a limit to the kind of information you can get out of this. Most importantly, you don't have any sort of button click except by either having buttons, somewhere around the trackpad, or by the way this does, interpreting how you move around it as button clicks. And then it fakes the feeling of a button click by having the only moving part in this, which is a little actuator which goes tuck underneath. It's amazingly deceptive. You are totally convinced that when you push down on this, it actually goes in, but it doesn't at all. Very neat. Okay. I'm sure other laptops are doing that as well. So if we put the laptop aside for a moment, we can look at something like the iPad. Now the iPad, let's go flip this down here. Hopefully you'll be able to see this. All right, so here's the iPad. I've just got a drawing app up on it. And on the iPad, you can draw with your finger, but it's not set to allow that at the moment. You have a pen, and the pen is an active device. This has a battery in it. Well, Apple calls it a pencil, but we'll call it a pen. This is an active device. This, unlike the stylus for the Palm, is not just a piece of plastic. This has a battery in it. It's got a relatively annoying but workable charging solution. The more recent one has a wireless charging solution. And it communicates with the tablet to recognize its position and also to provide a number of different kinds of feedback. This one, the Apple Pencil one, does pressure, right? Pressure. And it does tilt, which I don't know if that matters with this brush. No, not so much. But with some brushes on here, tilt matters, right? So it does quite a lot, right? And it does that by communicating with the tablet over Bluetooth. But this is still, as far as I can tell, essentially a capacitive kind of stylus. It's got to be, you would think, coupling capacitively to this. And what that means is it doesn't hover. You see, there's no cursor underneath it. You have to be able to see where you want to hit with the stylus, right? You have to be able to see it with your eyes and then touch it with the stylus, right? So that means is that you don't really have any ability to use it on a mouse-based interface because you can't see where the cursor is. And if you can't see where the cursor is, you know, clicking over here is not going to do anything because this isn't a touchscreen, right? You don't see where the cursor is. You can't, like, even if this worked as a capacitive stylus on the trackpad, even if it worked down here, it wouldn't be useful because you wouldn't have a target. And that's just a characteristic, I think, of the technology that's in it, that's in these pens, that it's maybe dependent on capacitive coupling. I don't know. I mean, I guess we could find out if that's conductive, right? Then it could be capacitively coupled. Maybe we should find that out. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't have to be very conductive. The plastic body of the pencil might be considered, but the fact that it's all plastic does suggest that maybe it's doing something else. If it's just capacitive, you can't make it work on the trackpad here. This would work on the trackpad, provided you put a whole Wacom tablet essentially underneath it, and it's been done, right? This would work because it would hover, right? Again, just to see, when I use the tablet, right, I can hover, and then I can draw. I can hover, and then I can draw, right? And apparently click a button without paying attention to it. Can't do that with this. So I thought my hopes were dashed. I thought the design of these, the characteristics of a capacitive touchpad, that was done. Only works if it touches. How am I ever going to have my dream of having a single Apple Pencil that works across multiple devices? But here's the thing. Apple seems to have come up with a solution to the problem, because the Apple Pencil 2, the one that replaces this, and the highest spec iPad Pro, apparently the pen hovers, and it hovers up to 1.2 centimeters. So 12 millimeters above the surface of the tablet. And what that tells me is that there is a technological solution, a technical solution if you want, to the problem of making a capacitive touchscreen on an iPad, or by extension, this capacitive trackpad here, work with a pen and have it hover. So what that suggests to me is that there's probably not much technical impediment to Apple putting a trackpad that works with the Apple Pencil on a MacBook of some sort. Now, I would expect that if they do something like that, it's going to be a feature in like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, right? Something that's really aimed at kind of creative professionals. Because wouldn't it be nice to have like a, you know, especially on a big machine like that, there's potential for quite a large trackpad at the base. Wouldn't it be nice to have that? You know, just make this shaped, well, it is shaped like the screen, right? Make it just a little larger, and you've got something that really might be useful. Certainly as a secondary work surface for people in animation and whatnot, I would probably find that very useful. So I wouldn't be shocked to see that show up, but before it appears in something that I'm likely to buy, probably not for a long time. So I am going to happily shift this little Wacom tablet, which by the way doesn't cost any more, actually costs less than that, and less than the, certainly less than the Apple Pencil 2. And I'm just going to hope that in the future, Apple comes out with a Pencil 3 and maybe a decision to allow you to buy a single Apple Pencil that would then work across multiple devices. Because that would be really cool. And I don't think with Bluetooth proximity and that sort of stuff, there would be any problem having the input transfer from here to the computer. I don't think that would be all that difficult to work out. And then suddenly even a $250 or whatever it would be Apple Pencil becomes a pretty attractive device. If it would work with that, maybe it's something that could show up in the phones as well, especially the larger ones. So that's my hope. What I don't particularly want, which the rumors are we're going to get, is a touchscreen on the laptop, because what does a touchscreen on a laptop mean? Your back hurts if you actually use it, but most likely it means that your screen is covered with fingerprints, just like the iPad tends to be. Your screen is covered with fingerprints all the time, especially if you happen to have small children. Anyway, I don't know what this counts as, a rant. I'm not sure what I'm going to call this section. I had some ideas, but I suspect you may hear some more videos like this, especially if people like it. You'll see more videos like this in the future. If you have any thoughts about the technology in these sorts of things, if you know more about them than I do, please let me know in the comments. And let's hope that we start to get some idea of, pencils or trackpads or whatnot, some of the things from the tablets moving into the computers and vice versa. We could end up with some very interesting devices over time. Have a good evening.